Twilight settled over the high desert mesa like a purple blanket, stretching long shadows across the parched earth. From her small adobe home on the outskirts of the territory, Nőyą sat motionless in her worn wheelchair, her keen ears catching what others would miss a faint cry carried on the evening breeze. The chief's son, heir to the Apache leadership, was dying. Though her legs had failed her years ago, her grandmother's healing wisdom had not. Under cover of darkness, she pushed her wheels through scrub and sand, guided only by starlight and determination. Her paralyzed body had made her an outcast, yet she alone possessed the ancient songs that might save him. Could the woman bound to a chair free not just the chief's son, but the spirit of an entire people? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The first light of dawn painted the adobe walls of Nőyã's small home in shades of amber and gold. Her weathered hands gripped the carved wooden wheels of her chair, a gift from her father in the final year of his life. Each armrest bore intricate carvings of healing plants, sage, yucca, and mesquite. The chair was both her prison and her freedom. She maneuvered to the east-facing window with a mesa, star-sat a unique star-shaped quartz crystal that caught the morning light. For 20 years, this had been her ritual. The crystal had called, to her grandmother first, then to her, a beacon for those with the gift of healing. "Another day," she whispered, her voice carrying the gentle rasp of someone who spoke more to plants than people. At 42, Nőyão held the quiet dignity of one who had faced suffering without surrender. The childhood fever that had taken her legs had also taken her place within the tribe. Chief Nőyão, following tradition, had reluctantly declared her touched by malevolent spirits. Her parents had built this place far enough from the tribe to honor tradition, close enough to remember what was lost. She prepared her morning tea, grinding juniper berries and desert sage with a smooth riverstone mortar. The small home was meticulously organized for her reach, shelves lowered, paths widened, everything essential within arm's grasp. Outside, her garden flourished improbably in the high desert soil. Plants that should not grow together somehow thrived under her care. Desert roses alongside healing herbs, cactus fruits beside rare medicinal flowers. She often spoke to them as she worked, her voice carrying the ancient songs her grandmother Ahiga had taught her. "You remember the old ways," she told the swaying plants. "Just as I do." Grandmother Ahiga had recognized the gift in Nőyão even before the fever. When the tribe turned away from the child with useless legs, Ahiga had turned toward her, passing down songs and remedies that predated even the oldest tribal memories. "The others forget," Ahiga had told her, "that weakness in body often means strength in spirit." A jackrabbit appeared at the garden's edge, regarding her with alert eyes. Animals approached her without fear, another sign of her gift, Ahiga had said. The rabbit twitched its nose before bounding away toward the distant tribal lands. From her vantage point, Nőyão could just make out smoke from the camp's morning fires. Chief Nőyã's band had returned to their summer grounds 3 days ago. She had watched the procession from afar, the horses, the travois loaded with supplies, the walking women and children. At the center had ridden Baba, the chief's son, straight-backed and proud on his painted stallion. Once, long ago, they had played together as children, before the fever, before the chair, before the separation. Now he was training to lead, and she lived in exile with her plants and memories. The distant sound of hoofbeats drew her attention. Sarah Miller, the settler's wife, approached on her dappled mare. Though the tribal elders shunned Nőyão, the settlers had no such restrictions. Sarah carried a small bundle before her on the saddle payment for last month's remedy that had cleared her youngest daughter's persistent cough. "Good morning, Miss Nőyą," Sarah called, her tongue struggling with the Apache name. "The child is better?" Nőyą asked, wheeling herself to the edge of her property. Right as rain. Dr. Freeman said it was a miracle, the way her lungs cleared. Sarah dismounted, presenting a parcel wrapped in clean cotton, fresh butter, and 2 loaves of sourdough. And John insisted I bring these. She produced a set of small metal tools perfect for working with delicate roots and seeds. "Thank him for me," Nőyą said, accepting the gifts with quiet grace. They spoke briefly of weather and gardens before Sarah departed, leaving Nőyą once again with the vast silence of the desert. This was her life, the rhythm of days marked by the sun's passage, the visitors seeking what the tribe had rejected, and the endless whisper of wind through sage. Evening came with a cooler wind. Nőyą had spent the day harvesting prickly pear fruits, their ruby flesh now drying on reed mats beside her door. Her hands were stained purple-red, and tiny invisible thorns still pricked her fingertips despite her careful work. She positioned her wheelchair beneath the westward window. This was her favorite time, watching the sun sink behind distant mesas. The sky aflame with colors no human hand could mix. The mesa star crystal caught the last golden rays, sending prisms dancing across adobe walls. That's when she heard it, faint but unmistakable. A cry carried on the wind. She went still, her head tilted like a bird's. There it came again, not an animal's call, but human. A voice raised in lament, then many voices joining together. From the direction of the tribal camp, death songs, funeral, preparations. Nőyą gripped her wheels tighter. These matters were no longer her concern. The tribe had made that clear 25 years ago. Yet something in the cadence of the cries tugged at her, an urgency that spoke of tragedy not yet complete. She closed her eyes, focusing beyond the sounds. The wind carried more than noise. It brought messages to those who knew how to listen. Grandmother Ahiga had taught her this skill during long nights when pain kept Nőyą from sleep. "Death hovers, but has not claimed," she murmured. "Someone fights between worlds." A face formed in her mind, young, strong features, now slack with illness. Ba, the chief's son. Her eyes snapped open. Impossible. How could she know it was him? Yet the certainty settled in her bones like winter cold. Moving with practiced efficiency, she gathered her medicine pouch from its shelf. The leather bag, soft with age and use, contained her most precious healing items passed down from Grandmother Ahiga. She added dried herbs from various jars, selecting each with purpose. "I cannot go," she told the empty room. "They would not welcome me." The death songs continued, rising and falling with the evening breeze. Her hands moved to a hidden compartment beneath her sleeping mat, extracting a small wooden box. Inside lay the eagle bone whistle, an ancestral instrument meant to amplify healing songs, connecting the singer to powers beyond the visible world. Grandmother Ahiga had pressed it into her hands the night before she died. "When the greatest need comes," she had whispered, "this will carry your voice to the ancestors." Nőyą held the whistle, feeling its weight, both physical and spiritual. Using it would require strength she wasn't sure she possessed. The cries from the camp grew more distinct as night fell, more urgent. "They have healers," she argued. With herself, "I am not needed." But she knew their healers followed newer ways, influenced by the changing world. Few remembered the oldest songs, the deepest remedies. Few could recognize certain poisons and their antidotes. Her gaze fell on the wheeled chair that both confined and carried her. The journey would be difficult, nearly impossible, in darkness over rough terrain. She had not ventured far from her home in years, certainly never as far as the tribal camp. Yet the pull was undeniable. With sudden resolve, she reached for her warmest shawl and a water skin. She secured the medicine pouch and whistle inside her dress, close to her heart. From another shelf, she took a small clay lamp and striker. "I may not be welcomed," she said to the knight, "but I will go where I am needed." She paused at her threshold, looking back at the small home that had been her sanctuary and prison. Then, with practiced hands, she turned her wheelchair toward the distant cries and pushed into the gathering darkness. The desert at night was another world. Stars punched holes in the vast darkness above, casting just enough light for Nőyą to make out the path before her. Her arms already ached from pushing the wheelchair across uneven ground dot from her pocket. She withdrew the moonstone compass, a polished stone her mother had given her as a child. "It always points toward your purpose," her mother had said. In the starlight, the stone seemed to glow faintly, guiding her toward the tribal camp. A mile from her home, the first real challenge appeared, a wash cutting across her path, its sandy bottom scattered with rocks. In daylight, she might have found an easier crossing. Now, she had no choice but to attempt the direct route. She positioned her chair carefully at the edge, tested the brake with one hand, and took a deep breath. "Down we go," she whispered, releasing the brake and controlling her descent with burning. Palms against the wheels, the chair bumped and slid down the embankment. At the bottom, the right wheel caught against a buried rock, nearly tipping her sideways. Nőyą threw weight in the opposite direction, righting herself with a GSP. For a moment, she sat breathing heavily in the wash bottom. "This is madness," she told herself. "Turn back while you still can." But the death songs echoed in her memory, and the moonstone compass seemed warm against her skin. She pushed forward. The climb up the far side proved even harder. 3 times her wheels spun uselessly in the loose sand. On the 4th attempt, she found purchase against a protruding root and heaved herself up with straining arms dot at the top. She paused to catch her breath. In the distance, pinpricks of firelight marked the tribal camp. Still so far, but a memory surfaced herself. At 12, running alongside other children, her legs strong and sure. Baba 2 years younger, but determined to keep pace, his round face serious with concentration. They had been friends then, before illness rewrote her story. "You run like the wind," he had told her with childish admiration. "Someday you'll run faster," she had replied. The memory dissolved as a coyote howled nearby. Others answered, "There," eerie chorus rising around her. Most would fear such sounds in darkness, but Nőyą felt comforted. Grandmother Ahiga had taught her that coyotes often marked safe paths through dangerous places. "Follow their song," she had said, "and you will find your way when lost." Nőyą. She adjusted her direction slightly, following the coyote's calls. The terrain became more forgiving, a game trail, winding between sagebrush and mesquite. Wheelchair moved easier now, though her shoulders burned with effort. The moon rose, bathing the landscape in silver light. Ahead, a jackrabbit bounded across her path, stopped, and seemed to wait. When she approached, it hopped forward, then paused again. "Are you my guide as well?" she asked with a small smile. The rabbit led her toward a gentler slope than she would have chosen. Animals had always responded to her presence, even before the fever. Grandmother Ahiga said it was because Nőyõ's spirit walked between worlds, not fully in either, thus able to bridge both. A new sound reached her horses moving across the desert. She doused her small lamp immediately and wheeled behind a cluster of creosote bush. Tribal scouts, most likely, searching for the source of the chief's son's affliction. Moonlight glinted off metal as 4 riders passed less than 50 yards. Away, their urgent conversation carried to her hiding place. "The poison works quickly," one said. "By morning, he will be beyond even the old medicine." "The chief blames outsiders," another replied. "He has sent warriors to the settler town. And if they find nothing, then the spirits have chosen to take Bebe. There is nothing more to be done. Nőyą waited until they were well past before emerging. Poison, not illness or injury. Her suspicion confirmed, she adjusted the medicine pouch at her side. The remedies she had brought might be sufficient, or they might not. She would know only when she saw him. The tribal camp sprawled across a flat mesa top, its 27 hide lodges arranged in the traditional circle. From her position behind a granite outcropping, Nőyą studied the movement of guards fewer than normal, as many had been sent to search for culprits or cures. The largest lodge at the center would be Chief Nőyą's, where Baba Lekli lay dying. She untied the sacred medicine pouch from her waist. The soft leather container, adorned with porcupine quills in the pattern of healing stars, contained her most potent remedies. She checked its contents by touch-dried herbs, mineral powders, small bones, and sacred objects. Each had its purpose in the old healing ways. Approaching the camp directly was impossible. They would see her coming across the open ground, and her wheelchair made stealth difficult. She needed another way dot, as if in answer. A mourning dove called from a nearby juniper. 3 times it sang its melancholy note, then flew toward the back of the camp, where a small creek cut through the mesa edge. Nőyą smiled grimly. There was her path. The creek bed provided cover, though pushing through its rocky course tested her strength and determination. Twice she had to lift her chair over fallen logs, her arms trembling with effort. At the camp's edge, a narrow game trail led upward. She followed it, emerging behind the last row of lodges. Fires burned low at this late hour. Most of the tribe slept, save for those tending the sick or standing guard. From the chief's lodge came the low murmur of worried voices and the rhythmic shaking of a medicine man's rattle. Nőyą moved from shadow to shadow, thankful that most attention focused on the front of the camp, where riders came and went. When she reached the back of the chief's lodge, she paused, listening. Inside, someone was singing not the death song she had heard earlier, but a healing chant. The singer's technique was flawed, missing the crucial third note that opened the pathway between worlds. She took a deep breath and slipped around the lodge entrance. A young warrior stood guard, his face tight with worry. She recognized him, Tashka, Babia's childhood friend. Before he could shout, she raised one finger to her lips and whispered, "I come to help." His hand went to his knife. "Nőyą," he said, voice low with shock. "You are not welcome here." "Yet here I am," she replied calmly. "While Baba dies inside." Tashka's eyes narrowed. "Our healers cannot help him," she finished, "or he would be recovering already." A weak cry from within the lodge made Tashka flinch. For a moment, indecision warred on his young face. "What harm can I do that has not already been done?" She asked softly. "Let me pass." "If I fail, nothing changes. If I succeed." After a long moment, he stepped aside, lifting the lodge flap. "The chief is away, searching for answers. If you are discovered, I know the risk." Inside, the air hung thick with smoke from medicinal herbs, the wrong ones, she noted immediately. 2 elderly healers hunched over a pallet where a still form lay. They looked up in shock as her wheelchair crossed the threshold. "Outsider," one hissed. "You are forbidden. I am Nőyą, granddaughter of a Higa," she said, her voice suddenly carrying the power of her lineage. "Step aside." Perhaps it was her tone, or perhaps the desperation of the moment, but the healers moved back, revealing their patient. Babe lay rigid on the sleeping mat, his handsome face contorted in pain. His skin had the gray pallor of approaching death, and a faint yellow tinge around his eyes confirmed what she suspected. Desert primrose poison rare, fatal, and almost unknown to modern healers. She wheeled closer, removing a small wooden cup from her medicine pouch. "Bring clean water," she ordered the nearest healer, who complied without question. With practiced hands, she mixed 3 powders from separate pouches into the water, stirring with a slender bone implement. "This will ease his pain and slow the poison," she explained, lifting Babier's head to help him drink. "But to cure him completely will require the full ceremony." The older healer stepped forward. "Our ways have changed. The old ceremonies will save him when your new ways cannot," Nőyą finished firmly. "Choose now between pride and his life." As if emphasizing her words, Babier's body suddenly arched in a violent spasm and went terrifyingly. Still, the decision was made for them. Nőyą worked quickly, her fingers moving with practiced precision as she administered the first remedy. Babier's breathing steadied, though he remained unconscious. "When did the symptoms begin?" she asked, examining his fingernails for the telltale blue tinge of advanced poisoning. "Yesterday at sundown," the older healer, Makia, replied. "After the council meeting. He complained of dizziness, then collapsed during the evening meal." Nőyą frowned. "What did he eat?" "Drink? The same as everyone: rabbit stew, cornmeal, spring water." "Bring me his water skin," she instructed, studying the yellow rim around Babier's eyes. Only desert primrose could cause that specific discoloration, a plant so rare she had seen it only twice in her lifetime. Young apprentice hurried to fetch the requested item. The water skin was finely made, decorated with beadwork identifying it as belonging to the chief's son. Nőyą uncorked it and sniffed carefully. Nothing unusual. She tipped a few drops onto her palm and touched her fingertip to the liquid and brought it to her tongue. Immediately, she spat into the fire. "There," she said grimly. "Desert primrose extract. Nearly tasteless when diluted, but deadly within a day if untreated." The healers exchanged alarmed glances. Could he have encountered it by accident? Asked Makia. Nőyą shook her head. "The plant grows only on the highest ridges, far from water. Its poison must be deliberately extracted." She held up the water skin. This was no accident. A heavy silence fell over the lodge, broken only by Babier's labored breathing. Who would do such a thing? The apprentice whispered. Before anyone could answer, the lodge flap was thrust aside. Chief Nőyą stood silhouetted against the night sky, his imposing figure flanked by warriors. His gaze fell on Nőyą and darkened with recognition and fury. "What is this outsider doing here?" he demanded. Though now in his 50s, Nőyã's voice still carried the power that had made him chief for 20 years. "Father," Tashka stepped forward. "I allowed her entry. Our healers could not. You dare bring the cursed one to my son's deathbed?" Nőyã's hand moved to his knife. "She has identified the poison," Makia intervened, surprising everyone. "Desert primrose. None of us recognized it." And Nőyą added calmly, holding up the water skin, "I have found how it was administered." The chief's anger faltered. He took a step forward, eyes moving between his unconscious son and the woman he had banished decades ago. "Explain." "The poison was in his personal water skin," she said, "not in the communal food or water. Someone targeted Baba specifically." Nőyą took the skin from her hands, examining it closely. "This never leaves his side except during council meetings." A new voice finished from the doorway. Soa, the tribe's second in command, entered the lodge. Tall and lean, with a face marked by old battle scars, he had been Nőyã's most trusted advisor for years. His gaze swept dismissively over Nőyą before addressing the chief. "I heard we had an unexpected visitor," he said. "The cursed. One has no place here." "She has identified what ails my son," Nőyą replied, studying Soa carefully. "Convenient that she appears just when needed," Soa remarked. "Perhaps to cast blame elsewhere for her own actions?" Nőyą observed the subtle shift in Soa's stance, the almost imperceptible tension in his shoulders. Recognition dawned. "When did you start wearing desert primrose root around your neck, Soa?" she asked quietly, nodding toward the small leather pouch hanging from a cord at his throat. An unusual choice for protection. Most consider it bad medicine. All eyes turned to the amulet. Soha's hand moved reflexively to cover it. "Many plants look similar," he said dismissively. "Not to one who knows," Nőyą replied. "Only a healer or someone with specific knowledge would recognize and handle such a plant, or know its effects when properly prepared." The lodge grew silent. Nőyão looked between his trusted advisor and his son's still form, understanding dawning in his eyes. "The council voted yesterday," he said slowly. "For the first time, they favored Babie's proposal to make peace with the settlers instead of your call for war." Soa's hand moved toward his knife, then stopped as warriors stepped forward on either side of him. "This changes nothing," he said coldly. "The Cursed One cannot save him. The poison has progressed too far." "We shall see," Nőyą replied, turning back to her patient. "Chief Nőyão, I need herbs from my home to complete the treatment, and I will require assistance for the ceremony." Nőyão hesitated only briefly before giving his consent, his eyes never leaving Soa. Dawn approached with aching slowness. While two warriors departed for Nőyã's home to retrieve the necessary herbs, Babie's condition deteriorated. His breathing grew shallow, and a bluish tinge spread across his lips. "He weakens," Nőyą said, pressing her fingers. To his wrist, the poison reaches his heart. Outside, Soa remained under guard, his face a mask of cold disdain. Inside, Chief Nőyão knelt beside his son's pallet, eyes never leaving the young man's face. "Can nothing be done until the herbs arrive?" he asked, voice rough with fear and exhaustion. "Nőyão." She hesitated, then reached into her medicine pouch and withdrew a small object wrapped in soft rabbit fur. Unwrapping it revealed the ancestral drum, no larger than her palm, made from a tortoise shell with deer hide stretched across its opening. Small stones inside rattled softly as she handled it. "This can buy us time," she said, "but requires strength I am not sure I have after the journey here." Nőyão studied her face. "What do you need?" "4 people to hold the cardinal directions. Fire, water from the morning's first dew, and silence from all others." The chief nodded, issuing commands. Soon the lodge was arranged according to her instructions. Makia at the north point, the apprentice healer east, Tashka south, and Nőyão himself at the west. A small fire burned in the center, and a shallow clay bowl of dew water sat beside Babie's head. Nőyão positioned her wheelchair at the foot of the pallet. She lifted the small drum and closed her eyes, gathering her strength. "The poison flows like a dark river through his body," she explained. "This rhythm will slow that river, creating pools where the poison weakens. But it must not stop until the herbs arrive." She began a gentle, hypnotic tapping on the drum. 3 beats, pause, 2 beats, pause. 3 beats, a rhythm that matched no human heartbeat, but seemed to resonate with something deeper. As she drummed, she hummed a melody so ancient its origins were lost to memory. Minutes stretched into an hour. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she dared not stop. The drum rhythm maintained the fragile barrier between Abai death dot outside, the camp stirred to life. Word had spread of the night's events. Some gathered near the lodge, curious about the outcasted healer's return. Others, loyal to Soa, muttered disapproval. Inside, Nőyã's arms began to tremble with fatigue. The journey, and now this. Sustained effort taxed her beyond endurance. Yet she continued, drawing on reserves she didn't know she possessed. "I cannot," she whispered, her rhythm faltering. Without speaking, Nőyão moved forward and placed his hands beneath hers, supporting the weight of the drum. Their eyes met briefly, his full of desperate hope, hers with surprised gratitude. The rhythm steadied once more. "The warriors should have reached your home by now," he said quietly. "If they ride hard, they will return by mid-morning," she replied, voice strained. "If Baba Khan hold until then, ... A commotion outside interrupted her words. Tashka slipped out to investigate, returning moments later with grave news. "Soa's supporters are gathered at the edge of camp," he reported. "They say the Cursed One brings more harm than healing. They demand she be removed before the sun reaches its peak." Nalnish's jaw tightened. "And Soa?" "Still under guard, but speaking to any who will listen. He claims you have been bewitched. By old superstitions, that your judgment is clouded by fear for your son." A spasm suddenly gripped Bia's body. His back arched, and a strangled sound escaped his lips. The blue tinge around his mouth darkened. "He worsens, Nőyą said urgently. "The drum alone cannot hold back the poison much longer." As if in answer to her words, a rider shout came from the camp's edge. "The warriors return," Tashka announced, peering through the lodge flap. Nőyą closed her eyes briefly in relief. "Prepare the space," she instructed. "When they arrive, we must work quickly. The final ceremony cannot be interrupted once begun." Nalnish stood, his face set with determination. "None shall interfere. I will see to it myself." As he strode from the lodge, Nőyą continued the life-preserving rhythm, each beat echoing the silent prayer in her heart. "Hold on, Bo, just a little longer." The warriors burst into the lodge, breathless from their hard ride. From their satchels came the precious herbs from Nőyõ's garden nightshade root, desert sage, and the rare white cactus flower that bloomed only under the full moon. Most importantly, they carried a small clay pot containing the blue mud that grew only beside her spring. "You found everything," Nőyõ said with relief, finally setting down the ancestral drum. Her arms hung limp with exhaustion. From a shelf near her sleeping mat, they had also retrieved her most sacred possession, the crystal water bowl. Carved from clear quartz by her great-grandmother's hands, the bowl captured moonlight and water, creating the purified base needed for the final remedy. Outside, the camp had divided into factions, those supporting Nalnish's decision to allow the healing, and those loyal to Soa, who viewed Noah's presence as a desecration. The chief's warriors formed a protective ring around the lodge, keeping both sides at bay. Inside, Nőyõ worked with focused intensity, grinding herbs with practiced movements, mixing the blue mud with sacred spring water in the crystal bowl. She instructed Makia and the apprentice in preparing Bi-Hu-Shing his face with dew water, marking his forehead, wrists, and ankles with symbols of the cardinal directions. "The ceremony must be unbroken once begun," she explained. "If the circle breaks or the chant falters, the healing path collapses." Chief Nalnish returned, his face grim but resolved. "Soa has escaped his guards," he reported. "My warriors search for him, but he has supporters hiding him." "It doesn't matter now," Nőyõ replied. "We must begin. The poison reaches his spirit core." Bia's breathing had grown so shallow it was barely visible. The blue tinge now covered his face entirely. Death hovered at the edges of the lodge, a presence Nőyõ could feel as tangibly as the fire's heat. She positioned herself at Bia's head, the crystal water bowl before her. Around them, 12 tribal members formed a circle, those who believed in the old ways enough to participate despite her outcast status. From her medicine pouch, she withdrew the eagle bone whistle and placed it to her lips. Its first note high and piercing silenced even the murmurs outside. A second note, deeper, seemed to vibrate the very air within the lodge. Nőyõ began the water-calling chant, her voice finding strength despite her exhaustion. The ancient words flowed like the element they summoned, words so old They predated the Apache language itself, passed from healer to healer since time immemorial. After the first verse, Makia joined hesitantly, remembering fragments from his childhood. Then others added their voices, elders who recognized the forgotten melody, younger members following their lead. The sound swelled, becoming something greater than individual contributions. Nőyą lifted the bowl of medicine to the firelight, where it caught the flames and seemed to glow from within. As she lowered it to Babie's lips, the lodge flap was suddenly thrown aside. Soa stood in the entrance, knife in hand. "Stop this desecration," he shouted. "The Cursed One brings death, not life." Without breaking her chant, Nőyą continued the ceremony. Two warriors moved to intercept Soa, but he slipped past them, lunging toward the center of the circle. Nalnish stepped into his path. The two men collided, chief and betrayer, their momentum carrying them against the lodge wall, away from the healing circle. They struggled silently, neither willing to disrupt the ceremony with outcries. Chanting intensified as Nőyą tilted the crystal water bowl, letting 3 drops fall onto Babie's forehead, 3 onto his heart, 3 onto his lips. With each drop, she sang the name of an ancestor who had carried the healing knowledge before her, ending with Grandmother Ahiga. The final notes of the chant hung in the air like physical things. Nőyõ's voice, clear and strong despite her exhaustion, carried the closing words alone. "Between worlds I walk, between death and life I stand. Through me flows the healing power of earth and sky. Return, wandering spirit. Return to your body's home." For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Bubba lay still as stone, no breath visible. Then, as the first ray of sunrise pierced through the smoke hole above, striking the crystal water bowl and sending rainbow light dancing across his face, Behi's chest rose in a deep, clear breath. The blue tinge receded from his lips. His eyelids fluttered. "He returns," Nőyõ whispered, her own strength finally failing as she slumped in her wheelchair. Silence filled the lodge as Babie's eyes opened fully. He blinked, confusion giving way to recognition as he focused on Nőyõ's exhausted face above him. "I know you," he whispered, voice cracked from disuse. "From long ago." The girl who ran like wind, tears welled in Nőyõ's eyes. "I don't run anymore," she said softly. "But I remember too." Against the lodge wall, the struggle between Nalnish and Soa had ended. The chief stood victorious, his former advisor, now restrained by warriors. Soha's face was a mask of thwarted rage. "The poison was meant for me," Nalnish said, approaching his son's side. "I gave Baba my water skin when his was empty during the council." "Father," Baba reached weakly for the chief's hand. "The peace agreement ... will proceed, as you wished," Nalnish assured him, gripping his son's fingers. "Your wisdom prevailed, even against treachery." The chief turned to Nőyõ, his expression solemn. "For 25 years I upheld the old law that cast you out. Today you have shown that some old ways deserve to be preserved, while others," he glanced at Soa, "should be questioned." Outside, the news of Babie's recovery spread through the camp. The opposing factions dissolved as relief and celebration took hold. Even Soa's most devoted supporters could not deny the miracle they had witnessed. "Take him away," Nalnish commanded, and warriors led Soa from the lodge. "The council will determine his fate." Nőyõ swayed in her wheelchair, the knights' ordeal catching up with her. Makia stepped forward, supporting her shoulders. "You need rest," he said. "You have given everything." "Not everything," she murmured. "There is always more to give." As the morning sun climbed higher, the tribe gathered outside the chief's lodge. Nőyõ was too exhausted to join them, accepting a sleeping place in a quiet corner where she quickly fell into deep slumber. she woke to afternoon light and the sound of celebration. Beside her sat a fresh water skin and a plate of food. As she ate, Tashka entered the lodge. "The chief requests your presence," he said with newfound respect, "when you are ready." Outside, the tribe had assembled in a great circle. At its center stood Nalnish and a much-recovered Ba-Ba-Bee, who now moved slowly but steadily. As Nőyą approached in her wheelchair, the crowd parted respectfully. Nalnish raised his hands for silence. "Today we witness the power of ancient knowledge preserved through one who was cast aside. The spirits have shown us our error through Nőyõ's healing hands." From behind him, an elder brought forward a newly carved cedar staff. Intricate symbols of healing and wisdom adorned its length. "This staff marks you as tribal healer and elder," Nalnish proclaimed, presenting it to Nőyõ. "No longer outcast, but honored keeper of ways nearly lost to us." Nőyõ accepted the staff, her hands tracing the carvings with wonder. "I kept the old songs only because my grandmother insisted they must not die," she said, voice carrying across the hushed gathering. "I never thought to use them among the people again." "The songs belong to all of us," Baba said. "As do you, if you will return." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Faces that had once turned away from her in fear now regarded her with admiration and hope. "What of Soa?" she asked. "Exiled, as tradition demands for one who attacks his chief," Nalnish replied. "But perhaps someday that tradition too may be reconsidered." The weight of the moment settled around Nagsu's shoulders, not a burden, but a mantle of responsibility and belonging she had never expected to bear. "I will need help," she said, looking at her wheelchair. "My home is adapted to my needs." "We will build you a new place here," Nalnish promised, "and learn from you how to make the world accessible to all forms of strength." As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Nőyõ found herself surrounded by tribal youth, their curious faces alight with interest as she began teaching them the first and simplest of the healing songs, the one for calling small blessings into daily life. Their voices, hesitant at first, grew stronger with each repetition. In their eyes, she saw the future of her people taking new shape, one that honored the wisdom of the past while embracing the promise of tomorrow. One moon cycle later, Nőyõ's new community healing space stood near the center of Kampa. Circular structure with wide doorways and smooth earthen ramps. Her wheelchair, once a mark of separation, now bore ceremonial decorations of honor beadwork, feathers, and small medicine pouches gifted by those she had helped. Each morning, patients sought her wisdom, and each afternoon, she taught the old songs to eager students. Even the elders who had once shunned her now came to learn. "Your weakness became your strength," Chief Nalnish observed one evening, "and in healing my son, you healed our people's spirit." Nőyõ smiled. Not weakness, just a different way of moving through the world. Baba sat, cross-legged before his vision, painting a deerskin canvas covered with ochre, charcoal, and plant-based pigments depicting what he had experienced while hovering between worlds. At its center stood a wheelchair with wings, surrounded by ancestral figures with outstretched hands. "I walked in the Shadowlands," he explained to Nőyõ, who studied the painting with interest. "I heard your voice calling me back, but could not find the path. Then I saw you, not as you are now, but as you were when we were children, running across the mesa. You led me home." He touched the painted figures reverently. "These are our ancestors. They showed me that our future depends on remembering their wisdom. The old and new ways must walk together, or we will lose ourselves entirely." Since his recovery, Baba had become Nőyõ's most dedicated student, spending hours each day learning the healing songs and plant lore. His position as the chief's son lent legitimacy to her teachings, encouraging others who might have hesitated to embrace knowledge from an outsider. "The poison nearly took my life," he said, "but gave me something precious in return. Clear sight." He looked at her with earnest eyes. "I remember how the children treated you after your illness. How I stood by and did nothing when the elders sent you away. That shame will always live in me." "We were children," Nőyą replied gently. "What matters is what we do now." "What I will do," he said with quiet determination, "is ensure that your knowledge reaches beyond our tribe. The settlers, too, have much to learn from the old ways." He gestured to the painting's edge, where figures of different colors stood together in a circle. "This is the vision that came to me in the Shadowlands, a future where all people share wisdom across boundaries." Nőyą nodded thoughtfully. "Your father might not be ready for such a vision." "Perhaps not," Baba agreed. "But he has already changed more than I thought possible. And so have I." News traveled fast across the territory. Within weeks, the story of the paralyzed healer who saved the chief's son had reached the settler town of Copper Springs, growing more elaborate with each telling. Sarah Miller stood before Nőyą's healing space, her youngest daughters, hand clasped in hers. Behind them waited 3 other settler families, all seeking the healing touch that had become legendary. "The doctor said her fever will take her if not broken by tomorrow," Sarah explained, her voice tight with worry. "I told my husband if Miss Nőyą could save the chief's son from certain death, perhaps she can help our Mary." Word of Nőyã's acceptance by the tribe had emboldened those settlers who had secretly sought her remedies for years. Now they came openly, bearing gifts and respectful words instead of furtive glances. Inside the healing space, Baba served as translator and assistant, his presence a bridge between 2 worlds. Chief Nőyą observed from the doorway, his expression thoughtful as he watched his son explain Apache healing concepts to the settler woman. That evening, as the Miller family departed with medicines and instructions, the territorial Indian agent arrived on horseback. Bradford Wells, a stern man not known for his cultural sensitivity, carried an official-looking document, the treaty document, that would define relations between tribe and government for years to come. "I've come to discuss terms," he announced to Nőyą. "Washington is eager to finalize agreements before spring." The standard procedure would have been closed negotiations with only the chief and agent present. Instead, Nőyą gestured toward the central fire. "We will discuss openly, with all voices heard," he said, "including those of our healer, who has shown us the value of different perspectives." Wells frowned at Nőyą in her wheelchair. "This is highly irregular. The woman has no authority in tribal government." "She has the authority of wisdom," Baba countered, "and her medicine has helped her own kind as well as ours." The negotiations lasted 3 days. When Wells finally departed, the treaty document contained unprecedented provisions, protected lands for gathering medicinal plants, cultural exchange between tribal healers and settler doctors, and formal recognition of traditional healing practices. This would not have happened before. Nőyą told Nőyą as they watched the agent ride away, "Your return has changed more than just our tribe." "Change was already coming," she replied. "I merely helped guide it toward healing rather than harm." Dr. Freeman from Copper Springs arrived the following week, medical bag in hand and skepticism in his eyes. He left 3 days later with a journal full of notes and a newfound respect for knowledge he had previously dismissed as superstition. 30 miles north, in the shadow of jagged mountains, Soa built a solitary shelter of stone and timber. The broken arrow hung from a leather cord around his neck, the shaft splintered by Nőyã's hand during the council that pronounced his exile. It symbolized his severed connection to the tribe, a constant reminder of his disgrace. "They will see their error," he muttered to the empty canyon walls. "When the settlers break their promises, when their diseases take our children, when their soldiers come." Yet with each passing day, the certainty in his voice diminished. News reached even his isolated camp carried by lone hunters who recognized but did not approach him. The tribe prospered under the new alliance. The healing woman's reputation grew. But Bia's vision of cooperation had, thus far, proven wiser than Sawa's warnings of destruction. He had been so certain. The old ways, his interpretation of them, demanded separation and strength. Weakness could not be tolerated. The disabled were cursed. Change meant death. These beliefs had guided his every action for 40 years. Now, alone with his thoughts, doubt crept in like evening shadows. One morning, he discovered fresh tracks around his camp, a wheelchair's distinctive pattern pressed into soft earth. She had come in the night, leaving a small pouch of healing herbs and a message scratched on birch bark. For the pain in your joints, some burdens we all carry. How had she known of the arthritis that plagued him? How had she found him? Why? Offer kindness to the man who had nearly killed the chief's son in his quest for power? Soha stared at the herbs for a long time before adding them to his evening tea. The relief was immediate and profound. Perhaps, he whispered to the flames, touching the broken arrow at his chest, I have misunderstood strength all along. He did not return to the tribe. His pride would not allow it. But neither did he continue to curse their new path. Some transformations begin in silence, far from witnessing eyes. The first snowfall came earlier than expected, blanketing the mesa in pristine white. For the Apache, winter meant migration to lower elevations where game remained plentiful and bitter winds less fierce. It was the first such journey for Nőyą since childhood, the first test of her full integration into tribal life. The traditional path down the eastern slope is too narrow for your chair, Maki observed during planning discussions. We must find another way. In previous generations, the solution would have been simple: leave her behind or carry her. Instead, the tribe adapted. Young warriors spent 3 days widening the trail, removing obstacles, and building simple wooden bridges over washouts. On the morning of departure, Nőyą discovered a gift outside her dwelling: the winter blanket woven by the tribal women during secret evening gatherings. Its intricate pattern incorporated symbols of healing and strength, rendered in natural dyes of deep blue, russet, and gold. Along its edge, barely visible among the geometric designs, ran a line of tiny wheels. So you carry our respect with you, explained the eldest weaver, and remember that your path is now woven with ours. The journey proved challenging despite preparations. Twice her chair became stuck in snow-hidden depressions. Rather than embarrassment, these moments became opportunities for shared problem-solving. Children eagerly demonstrated how walking sticks could become impromptu levers. Warriors showed how rawhide straps distributed weight more effectively when assistance was needed. At the winter camp, Nőyą found her new dwelling had been constructed with careful attention to her needs. Wider doorways, smooth floors, storage within easy reach, and a central location that acknowledged her status. We learn from you as much as from the medicine, Chief Nőyą observed as the tribe settled into winter routine. How to see obstacles not as barriers, but as puzzles to solve. Wrapped in her special blanket beside the community fire, watching children play in the snow while elders prepared the evening meal, Nőyą finally understood what her grandmother had meant years ago. Your greatest medicine will not come from plants, but from how you live with what life has given you. Spring brought new growth and new challenges. While gathering early herbs with her students, Nőyą made a troubling discovery. This plant is wrong, she said, examining a medicinal root. Its essence is weakened. The changing weather patterns have altered its growth. Grandmother Ahiga had passed knowledge orally, as healers had done for generations. But the world was changing faster than oral tradition could adapt. Nőyą realized that memory alone might no longer be sufficient to preserve the healing knowledge. We must create a new way, she announced to her circle of 7 apprentices, 4 tribal youth and 3 from settler families. Among them, Baba had shown the greatest aptitude, his near-death experience having awakened unusual sensitivity to the plant world. From the trading post, she acquired bound journals of blank paper, a luxury previously unthinkable for recording. Sacred knowledge. Thus began the creation of the student journal, the first written record of healing songs and remedies. Draw what you see, she instructed. Record when and where each plant grows, how it changes through seasons, which parts hold medicine, and how they must be prepared. The merging of Apache and settler approaches proved unexpectedly powerful. Tribal students contributed intricate observational details passed through generations, while settler children added precise measuring techniques and systematic cataloging methods. This is not replacement, but preservation, Nőyą explained. When some elders expressed concern, when I am gone, the knowledge remains. Each evening, students gathered in her dwelling, comparing notes and observations. Under her guidance, they developed a unique writing system, combining Apache symbols with English letters, accessible to both cultures, yet protecting the sacred nature of certain remedies. Bob proved especially adept at bridging the approaches. The future healer must walk in both worlds, he noted, carefully transcribing a particularly complex preparation method. As must the future chief, Nőyą replied with a knowing smile. When completed, the first student journal would become both practical guide and symbolic testimony proof that wisdom could be preserved through change rather than destroyed by it. Summer brought trade caravans from the south, carrying goods, news, and something unseen fever. It began in the settler town, children with spotted rashes, elders with racking coughs. Within days, the same symptoms appeared in the tribal camp. Measles. Dr. Freeman diagnosed grimly when called to examine the first Apache child to fall ill. It spreads like wildfire. Your people have little resistance. Previous outbreaks had decimated neighboring tribes. The common response had been isolation, each group retreating from the other, blaming and fearing. This time would be different. Nőyą called a joint council of tribal elders and town leaders. We must work together, she insisted. This disease does not recognize boundaries between her peoples. From her medicine collection came small flat stones, quarantine tokens carved with protective symbols. Mark each dwelling with illness, she instructed. Not as shame, but as knowledge. Those who have recovered can tend the sick without fear of falling ill again. Dr. Freeman contributed his medical knowledge, while Nőyą jetted traditional remedies that eased symptoms and supported recovery. The combined approach proved remarkably effective. The fever responds to willow bark tea, she noted in the growing student journal. The rash to comfrey poultice. But most important is clean water and rest. For 3 weeks, Nőyą hagub. Between communities, her wheelchair becoming a familiar sight on the road, connecting tribe and town. Children no longer stared or questioned. Instead, they watched for her arrival, knowing she brought both medicine and calm reassurance. Baba coordinated tribal efforts, organizing hunting parties to provide nourishing food for the recovering sick. Sarah Miller led the settler. Women in preparing meals delivered to marked dwellings. What might have driven communities apart instead forged stronger bonds. When the outbreak finally subsided, 6 had died, 3 from each community. Far fewer than previous epidemics had claimed. We mourn them together, Chief Nőyą declared at a joint memorial ceremony, and together we survived. Nőyą watched from beside Dr. Freeman as Apache prayers mingled with Christian hymns under the vast desert sky. The territorial newspaper later reported the unprecedented cooperation, noting the wheelchair-bound Apache healer has accomplished what a century of government policy could not: true partnership between peoples. She kept the clipping, though its description of her focused more on limitation than ability. Change came in small steps, she knew. The important transformation was visible in the quarantine tokens, now kept as protective talismans in homes throughout. The territory symbols of how fear had been transformed into shared strength. 1 year to the day after Bae's healing, the tribe gathered on the mesa where it had all begun. At the center of the celebration stood the ceremonial calendar, a circular stone marker, created to commemorate the night that had changed everything. Carved with symbols representing the cycles of healing, seasons, and community, it would serve as both historical record and future guide. From this day forward, Chief Nőyão proclaimed, "We will gather yearly to remember how one person's courage restored not just a life, but a people's spirit." The celebration brought together elements once thought incompatible. Traditional dances were performed alongside new ones, created to accommodate those with different abilities. The feast included both ancestral Apache dishes and settler contributions. Even Dr. Freeman attended, bringing news that the Territorial Medical Association had formally recognized certain traditional remedies, listing them in their official compendium. Ba, now officially recognized as both future chief and apprentice healer, led a procession of students who demonstrated their growing knowledge through songs and ceremonial preparations. As twilight approached, Nőyão found a quiet moment alone, wheeling herself to the edge of the mesa where she had first heard the distant cries 1 year before. From her pocket, she took a small object, a carved wooden bird that had belonged to Grandmother Ahiga. "You knew," she whispered to the memory of the old woman. "You knew my path would lead back here." The setting sun painted the landscape in the same purple hues as that fateful evening. In the distance, her old adobe home stood empty now, preserved. As a place of reflection and remembrance, Chief Nőyão approached, respectful of her solitude, but bearing news. "The tribal council has reached a decision," he said. "From this day forward, no child born with difference will be cast out. Instead, they will be recognized as specially gifted by the spirits, with Nőyão, she who perseveres, as their guardian spirit." She accepted this honor with a quiet nod, watching as the first evening star appeared above the desert she had always called home. 5 years later, Nőyão's wheelchair moved easily across the smooth stone pathways that now connected the expanded tribal village. The silver wheelchair wheels, gifted by grateful community members to replace her wooden ones, caught the sunlight as she made her morning rounds. The healing center had grown to include separate structures for teaching, treatment, and medicine preparation. Students came from 5 different tribes and 3 settler communities to learn the integrated healing approach, now known throughout the territory as the Balanced Way. Chief Bahu had assumed leadership when his father stepped down the previous winter, greeted her with the traditional respect due to the tribe's most honored elder. "The territorial governor has approved our proposal," he announced. "The healing knowledge will be formally taught at the new desert university. Your methods will reach even further than we imagined." Nőyão, now approaching 50, nodded with quiet satisfaction. What had begun with a desperate journey through darkness had blossomed beyond any expectation. The student journal had expanded to 12 volumes, preserved in multiple copies throughout the region. Most meaningful to her was the sight of 2 young tribal children, one unable to walk, another unable to hear, being fully included in community life, their differences seen not as burdens, but as unique perspectives that enriched the whole. She who perseveres, the people called her still. But now they understood. True perseverance belonged not to one woman, but to a community that had learned to value all forms of strength.